Hare Ram, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Shri Krishna Chaitanya Brahma Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktarinda Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, right. I spoke to Shamahan about it yesterday and the day before. Ram, Hare, Hare, Krishna, Ram, 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 Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Ram, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Hare Ram, Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Ram. Okay, devotees, here we go. So devotees, now is our 63rd session of Bhakti Vaibhava, study of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we are in the first canto, Bhagavatam, and we are in chapter 15, and let me just open things up. But in the meantime, let us chant. Let us chant our prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchkalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, devotees, here we go. So So, we are somewhere. Are we? Let me just check here.
The last was 25.
Was it?
25 and 26 together.
25, and 26 together. We did that. Unfortunately, I didn't mark. I should have marked. 25 and 26 we did, or we are to do? We did. All right, so we go on to 27. Yes, okay, here we go. Devotees. 27, wow. It's a mega purport. It is really a big purport. Anyway, let's go for it. So verse 27. And it's Arjuna speaking to Yudhisthira. Yeah, expressing his feelings on the departure of Lord Krishna. Now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead, Govinda, because they're impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. Right, okay. All right, so the purport there, yeah, it's quite a purport. So, what? That's Hindi. Right, okay. So here, Prabhupada makes the point, here Arjuna's referring to Bhagavad Gita, of course, the instructions that Lord Krishna gave him, which relieved his burning heart at that time on the battlefield. And the Lord left behind those instructions not just for Arjuna 5,000 years ago, but for everyone, including now and into the future too. So Prabhupada makes the point that we don't have to study all the Vedic literatures. We can just study Bhagavad Gita. Yes. And it'll be fine. It'll really be great, actually, if all we study is Bhagavad Gita. So, right. So now, of course, Krishna has left this world, and Arjuna's been left behind, and Arjuna, he wants to do what we can do. He's in the same position as us, in the sense that Krishna's not there. But by remembering Krishna's instructions, then everybody will find their heart, the burning in their heart is relieved. And Srila Prabhupada, so Prabhupada's saying that Bhagavad Gita, he's showing Bhagavad Gita can be consulted at any time. Yeah, at any time, past, present, or future. Okay, so then Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport, So Bhagavad Gita can be consulted at any critical time, not only for solace from all kinds of mental agonies, but also for the way out of great entanglements, which may embarrass one in some critical hour. There's so many situations that one can get into. Okay, so then the second paragraph. So Bhagavad Gita is there in printed form. So that anybody can get those same wonderful teachings that Arjuna got, and therefore take instruction from Krishna, even though he's not visible before us.
We did this.
Sorry?
We think we did 27.
No.
I heard your recording for Friday and we've covered this already.
Really?
Yeah.
And the long, long purport.
Yeah, we went through like on the fourth paragraph, the 5 points, the Supreme Lord, the living being and all. We've already gone through that.
Oh. You sure?
Yes, I heard you comparing 1 and 2, the differences. The Supreme Lord and the living entity.
I see. Oh. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yes, we finished the entire book.
I thought it was 28 because this file I've got, it opens. Yeah, it opened at 28.
28 we have to do.
So anyway, devotees, you got a little extra, about 27. Krishna. So now we're on to the third section, verse 28 to verse 33, which we've titled, Arjuna recovers himself and others react to the news. Yeah, other people, devotees there, react to this, the news of the departure of the Lord. Okay, so here we go, 28. Sutta Goswami said, thus being deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of the Lord, which were imparted in the great intimacy of friendship, and in thinking of his lotus feet, Arjuna's mind became pacified and free from all material contamination. So just see, devotees, it worked. He wanted to fix his mind on Krishna's instructions and Bhagavad Gita to ease his anxiety and the disturbance in his mind. So he did it, and his mind became pacified. There you go. It works. That's wonderful. So Prabhupada makes some interesting points here. First point is that because Krishna's absolute, then meditation on him, remembrance of him, it's as good as yogic trance or the sort of traditional samadhi. So Arjuna began to think of Lord Krishna's instructions. And because Krishna's non-different from his name, his form, and his instructions, he felt the presence of the Lord. And this eliminated the contamination from his mind. And Prabhupada gives the example of the sun. The sun, when the sun appears in the sky, then it brings immediate dissipation of darkness. It's immediate. As soon as the sun is there, darkness is gone, ignorance is gone. And so, like that, because the Lord is non-different from his name, his form, his instructions, and all these things, So Prabhupada makes the point that therefore Lord Chaitanya recommended chanting of the holy names, not just chanting, but constant chanting. At the very least, regular chanting, which the idea there would be that if you're chanting regularly but not all the time, means that when you're not chanting, you're doing some service. And so your mind is focused on that service, how to do it nicely and really working at the service. So it's the same thing, because just remembering his service is the same as being with him. Right, so Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport. Wow. The feeling of separation from the Lord is undoubtedly painful to the devotee, but because it's in connection with the Lord, it has a specific transcendental effect which pacifies the heart. That's not the conclusion of the purport, by the way, it's just before that. But yeah, that's important. So feelings of separation from the Lord, one may miss the Lord, that we wish we could be in his association. But because it's in connection with him and it's remembrance of him, it has the same pacifying effect. So any contact with the Lord has that wonderful pacifying effect, right? So verse 29, Arjuna's constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna rapidly increased his devotion. And as a result, all the trash in his thoughts subsided. You can tell an American had his hands on that. The trash. Yeah, anyway, the rubbish or whatever. So what is this trash? Prabhupada explains it's material desire. And through material desire, we face so many things which discourage us in our spiritual lives. Because there's material desire there, we get into different situations. Because we have material desire, we may get into the association of materialistic people. I mean, we may at some point at least. And, materialistic people, particularly if they're real staunch materialists, then, it's very disturbing for a devotee. Yeah, as Prabhupada says, they discourage the very existence of spiritual identity. So in this way, if one entertains these material desires, in this way, we're us conditioned souls, birth after birth, we're trapped here, with sometimes materially pleasing, but definitely sometimes materially very displeasing things and situations and association and all that. So what those things are, if we're just birth after birth stuck in material life, they're reactions to our material desires. Yeah. But when we see, this is interesting the way Prabhupada puts it, when we contact the Lord, we see the naked forms of these material desires, and our intelligence is pacified. Yeah, it happens often like that. That as devotees we get into awkward situations, difficult, challenging situations, which are reactions to our material desires. But then when we focus our mind on the Lord, then we see, look at this, how I'm entangled in this world. And I got to get out of it, so that determination rises. So Prabhupada does conclude the purport by saying, as soon as Arjuna turned his attention towards the instructions of the Lord, as they're inculcated in Bhagavad Gita, his true color of eternal association with the Lord became manifest, and thus he felt freed from all material contaminations. Oh yeah, that's wonderful and so true. Okay, verse 30. Because of the Lord's pastimes and activities, and because of his absence, it appeared that Arjuna forgot the instructions left by the personality of Godhead. But factually, this was not the case. And again, he became lord of his senses. Right, so, just a sec, sorry. Right. So the conditioned soul, that's us. Conditioned souls. We are entangled, we are enwrapped in fruitive activities by the force of time. But Krishna, when he comes, is not influenced by time. And that's why when Krishna was here, he didn't age. He was on the planet 125 years, but he didn't age in terms of appearance beyond, late teens, like maybe 18, the Kishore period. Yeah. So, past, present, or future, they have no effect on Krishna. He and his activities are eternal, and they're manifestations of his Atma Maya, internal potency. Right, so all these things, they're spiritual in nature. I mean, Krishna's pastimes and everything he does. Spiritual. But to the layman, just your person in the street, they seem to be the same as material activities. We as devotees, we try to sell our books, and the materialistic people, they try to sell so many things, and including books. And when they see us distributing books, they think, oh, same thing. Even, sometimes we meet these people and they really think that we are distributing books only because we want money. Because we want to get some money. But actually we're distributing the books mainly by far to give people knowledge and help people and save people, actually. Yes. So Prabhupada makes the point that to such people, then it would appear that Arjuna and his brothers and their army, their engagement in the Battle of Kurukshetra is just like the Kauravas and their engagement. But actually, Arjuna, his brothers, and Krishna, it looks like they're all engaged just in the same way as the bad guys, the Kauravas. But Prabhupada makes the point that actually the Lord was executing his mission for the upliftment of humanity. Yeah. So therefore, these activities which people think are material, they don't, Prabhupada says, they didn't drive him away from his transcendental position. Because people, to some degree, some people at least, they understand if you're really trying to be spiritual, then you can't get absorbed in material activity. It'll just undermine your whole Krishna consciousness. And you'll find your Krishna consciousness sort of disintegrating and falling to pieces. So, Srila Prabhupada then Prabhupada refers to 1865. Manmana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijani priyosi me. We should always think of the Lord. We should never forget him. We should become his devotees. We should offer obeisances to him and glorify him, actually. So if we live like this, then we receive the blessings of the Lord in the form of receiving the shelter of his lotus feet. And the shelter of his lotus feet, it's described they're like a big umbrella. And when it's raining, if you got a big umbrella, you're all right. Yeah. So his feet are like a big umbrella because they give us shelter from all the unpleasantness of Kali Yuga. Right. Okay. So last paragraph here. Arjuna had no desire to fight with his relatives, but he fought for the mission of the Lord. And like this, devotees, sometimes they do something they would, if it wasn't for Krishna, they'd really not want to do it. But because it's for Krishna, even though it doesn't appeal to them, they'll do it for Krishna. Yes. So Arjuna was like that, or became like that, to the point he was always engaged in the mission, spreading Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So, and because he was always engaged like that, then when the Lord left this world, Arjuna remained in the same consciousness and effectively with Krishna by remembrance. Yeah. So therefore, we need to adjust our activities, Prabhupada says, in pace with the Lord's mission. Then we'll go back to Godhead. It'd really be nice to go back to Godhead. It's so much nicer than Santon or any of these places. Yeah. But you got to go for it. So yeah, go back to Godhead. This is the highest perfection of life. So verse 31, because of his possessing spiritual assets, the doubts of duality were completely cut off. Thus he was freed from the three modes of material nature and placed in transcendence. There was no longer any chance of his becoming entangled in birth and death, because he was freed from material form. Yeah, well, that's interesting. So yeah, Prabhupada explains the doubts of duality. Where do they begin from? Where does it all come from? The bodily conception of life, which manifests in the form of I, me, and mine. Yeah. And we can have hundreds and thousands of such ideas, all revolving about, I would like to do this, and this is mine, and if it's not, it should be, and I'll try and make it mine. So, but if we assimilate Krishna's teachings, we'll become free from that, and we'll understand and we'll see, through the eyes of knowledge, we'll see that Krishna's everything. And ultimately, in one sense, Krishna is our oneself. It's a bit, extraordinary. But yeah, we're part and parcel of Krishna. Means we are parts of Krishna. Yeah. We're parts of Krishna. And anything which is part of some other bigger thing is part of it. Like here, these different parts of the microphone, they're all parts of the microphone. Yeah. So they're one with the microphone. So, and Prabhupada makes the point, everything is part of his potency, and the potent and the potency are non-different. Just like we got these lights here, and they're shining, and the shining, the light, is here. You can see it's here because I put my hand here, and a shadow comes. Means from one of the lights or some of the lights. So it's like that. Yeah. So, but if you turn off, or when we turn off these lights, then there'll just be no light. So the light here and the light on the floor and on each one of us will be gone. So that means that the light up there in the ceiling and the light here is one. It's not really two, it's one. Yeah, because the potent and the potency are not different. So when Arjuna, as described, took up the instructions of Krishna, he overcame all his material conceptions. And he understood Krishna is still with him by his instructions, by his form, by his pastimes. He's also in his non-dual energies. So therefore, Prabhupada makes the point, we can be with Krishna constantly by absolute knowledge, even now, by hearing and chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're with Krishna. Krishna's with us. Yeah. Okay. Right. So Krishna's there in his instructions, his form, his pastimes. He's also there in his non-dual energies. Yeah. In his non-dual energies. So in this way, by absolute knowledge, we can be with Krishna constantly, even now. On the 21st of November, at 6:31 in the evening. We can be completely with Krishna. And we should be. Yeah, right. So through hearing and chanting. So Prabhupada says, one can see him. One can feel his presence even in this present life, simply by understanding the Advaya Gyan Lord, or the Absolute Lord, through the process of devotional service, which begins with hearing about him. So yeah, we can feel his presence. It means like an experience we can have if we really chant nicely, very attentively, with real focus, then we'll feel upliftment gradually coming to us step by step. We'll feel it. And where's it coming from? The presence of the Lord. Yeah, right. So Arjuna, of course, had achieved that stage some time before on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So when he was feeling separation after the Lord left this world, then he knew what to do. He just immediately took shelter of the instructions of the Lord, of Bhagavad Gita, and probably chanting. And then quickly he was placed in his original position. This is the position of Vishok, or the stage of being freed from all grief and anxieties. Wouldn't that be great? Won't that be great? No more anxieties. Whew. Verse 32. Upon hearing of Lord Krishna's returning to his abode, and upon understanding the end of the Yadu dynasty's earthly manifestation, Maharaj Yudhisthira decided to go back home, back to Godhead. Yeah. Because he knew Narada Muni had told him that the Lord was going to wind up his pastimes, and when he does that, you also, Narada was speaking to Yudhisthira, you can leave, wind up your pastimes. So now Yudhisthira knows, he just found out from Arjuna, Lord's left. So Yudhisthira started thinking, right, let's go back to Godhead. Let's just pull out, stop being the king, and wander off, focused on the Lord, leave this body, and go back to him. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, since the appearance and disappearance of the Lord and his eternal associates are transcendental, one should not be bewildered by the external features of appearance and disappearance. Great. Okay, so verse 33. Kunti, who's of course Arjuna's mother, after overhearing Arjuna's telling of the end of the Yadu dynasty and disappearance of Lord Krishna, engaged in the devotional service of the transcendental personality of Godhead with full attention, and thus gained release from the course of material existence. Yeah. So it sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? You just engage in devotional service, very attentively, and you just go back to Godhead. Haribol, there you go. Das Vidanya. Or what you say in Afrikaans. Tot ziens. Tot ziens. Yeah. Okay. Right. Anyway, so Prabhupada makes some points. As always, good points. The setting of the sun is not the end of the sun. And similarly, when the Lord leaves this world, it's not the end of the Lord. He's just out of our vision. And same with the Yadu dynasty. All the relatives of Krishna, basically. Yeah. That when the time came, they simply left. And it's not like they died and they were finished and that was the end of them. I mean, many of them may have died, but they, as eternal spiritual persons, they lived on to carry on in the Lord's pastimes elsewhere. Right. So Kunti got the same idea. Yeah. So she engaged in devotional service, which guarantees, let me just check something here, which guarantees you a passport for going back to Godhead after leaving this body. Yeah, we need that passport. If you go to the gates of the kingdom of God, of Goloka Vrindavan, and you don't have that passport, you got to go back to where you came from. Yeah. I remember once I was visiting Lithuania. I had just been there, like several months before or something. And you didn't need a visa at that point. But then they changed the law, so you did need a visa. And I didn't know. So I just got on the plane and flew to Lithuania, walked up, gave them my passport, Haribol, there we go. And they were going to send me back on the same aeroplane I'd come from Frankfurt. But Shamananda Prabhu saved the day. He did an emergency application for a visa for me on the spot in the airport. And they let me in. Yeah, really. So anyway, okay. So, but yeah, if you engage in devotional service regularly, then you get your passport out back to Godhead. So, yeah, and when you begin to engage in devotional service, then you begin spiritualizing your body. And as a result of that, the devotee, in due course, not like today or something, the devotee loses contact with the body. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the devotee on the level of Krishna Prema loses contact with the body so much because he's so absorbed in his personal relationship with Krishna, independent of the body, so that advanced devotee may not even notice when the body dies. He may not even notice. But after a while, he may notice, oh, what happened? Where did my material body go? Oh, I must have died. So what to speak of it not being, a painful or dramatic experience for him or whatever like that. He doesn't even notice because he loses contact with the body. Yeah, so you can only go by devotional service. You can't go by rocket or space capsule or whatever, something like that. Yeah. It's not mythical. You can go, but you have to prepare by doing devotional service. So that's the end of that section, devotees. And let's go on to next section is verse 34 to verse 36. The fourth section, facts surrounding the Lord's departure, certain information. I'll just read the verses first of all. 34. The supreme unborn Lord Sri Krishna caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies, and thus he relieved the burden of the earth, of the world. This action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn, though both are the same to the controller. Right. So here's an interesting little historical point, which Srila Prabhupada brings up. That Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Prabhupada brings up in the purport here of verse 34. Oh, well, wait a minute. No, I'm just reading the verses, sorry. So, okay, that was 34. 35, the Supreme Lord relinquished the body which he manifested to diminish the burden of the earth. Just like a magician, he relinquishes one body to accept different ones, like the fish incarnation and others. Okay, all righty. So then verse 36, which is the last verse in the section. When the personality of Godhead Lord Krishna left this earthly planet in his self-same form, from that very day, Kali, who'd already partially appeared, became fully manifest to create inauspicious conditions for those who are endowed with a poor fund of knowledge. Right. Okay, so Prabhupada the verse mentions that Kali Yuga had already partially appeared. And this was particularly in the situation where Shringi, the Brahmin boy, cursed Maharaj Parikshit. It was Kali. Yeah. But it was just partial, just one young boy. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, oh no, wait a minute, what am I doing? Krishna, why do I keep forgetting? Okay, anyway, let's go back. 34. The Supreme Unborn Lord Sri Krishna caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies, and thus he relieved the burden of the world. This action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn, though both are the same to the controller. So Prabhupada mentions at the beginning of the purport, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, some of those sages in Naimisharanya who Sutta Goswami was reciting all of this to, some of them were not happy to hear of the Yadus dying, particularly through intoxication, drinking rice wine. So therefore, Sutta assures the sages that the Lord caused them to give up their bodies. He caused it. So it's not just some whimsical happening. It was the Lord caused it to happen. So, the Lord and his associates came to help the demigods Because if you remember the story, the demigods were just really disturbed because of all the demons. So therefore they approached Lord Brahma, Bhumi, Mother Earth particularly, approached Lord Brahma, who then approached Krishna in the company of all the other demigods and various others. Right, so let's see. So the Lord and his associates come to help the demigods eradicate the burden of the world. So some demigods came to help, yeah. And afterwards, by the will of the Lord, they had to give up their bodies. And so they gave up their bodies quickly by fighting in a state of intoxication. They didn't have to drag out, with some disease for months or even years, become incapacitated. Just there on the battlefield, suddenly bang, whack, boing, and that's it, finished. That's the end of the story. Yeah. So Prabhupada makes the point, sometimes demigods drink, and sometimes it gets them into trouble. Yeah, it gets them into trouble. And he gives the example of Nalakuvara Manigriva in the Damodar Leela. They had been drinking and engaging in, illicit association with women. But later, by the grace of the Lord and the grace of Narada Muni, they became reinstated in their positions. So for the Lord's equal to everyone. Yeah. But the demigods are obedient, whereas the demons are not. The asuras, the demons, are not obedient to the Lord. And therefore, he favors the demigods because they're devotees. Even though sometimes they take some liquor, but still essentially, at the bottom of their hearts, they're devotees. But the asuras, they just do endless nonsense. So let's see. Prabhupada talks about the idea of taking out a thorn with a thorn. He says one thorn, which causes pinpricks on the leg of the Lord, is certainly disturbing to the Lord. And the other thorn, which takes out the disturbing element, certainly gives service to the earth. Did you follow that? Yeah? The thought process? Right. So you take out a thorn with a thorn. So Prabhupada concludes more or less. So one who is disturbing the Lord is asura, and one who removes disturbing elements is a devata, or a god, a demigod. Right, and verse 35. The Supreme Lord relinquished the body which he manifested to diminish the burden of the earth. Just like a magician, he relinquishes one body to accept different ones, like the fish incarnation and others. Okay. All right. So, Krishna is not impersonal or formless. His body is known different from him, and therefore he's known as the embodiment of Satchitananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And Prabhupada makes an interesting point. In the Brihad Vaishnavi Tantra, it is clearly mentioned that anyone who considers the form of Lord Krishna to be made of material energy must be ostracized by all means. Boot him out. Krishna. And if by chance the face of such an infidel is seen, one must clean himself by jumping in the river with his clothing. Enthusiasm. Yeah, so Krishna's deathless because he's got no material body. His body can't die because it is composed of eternity. So his apparently dying is like the jugglery of a magician. You know, you may have seen or at least heard of magicians doing tricks like being cut in half. You heard about that, or did you see that? Yes. But it's just show. It doesn't happen, actually. So similarly, the Lord has different forms. Which are eternally accepted. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right. He doesn't, interesting point, he doesn't create those forms. They're eternal and for specific purposes. And Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita 24 to 25, it's chapter 7. The impersonalists think he has no form. Yes. The impersonalist thinks that I have no form, that I'm formless, but that at present I've accepted a form to serve a purpose, and now I'm manifested. But such speculators are factually without sharp intelligence. Though they may be good scholars in the Vedic literatures, they are practically ignorant of my inconceivable energies and my eternal forms of personality. And how is this? The reason is, Krishna says, I reserve the power of not being fully exposed to non-devotees by my mystic curtain. So therefore the less intelligent fools can't see him and can't understand him. Right. And Padma Purana puts it in a nice way. Those who are envious and angry at the Lord are not fit to know his actual forms. Like Shishupal, when he saw the Lord, he saw the Brahmajyoti. And he was dazzled. He couldn't see the body of Krishna underneath the Brahmajyoti. When the wrestlers saw him, they saw thunderbolts. These are all temporary manifestations which are relinquished by him sooner or later, but he is eternally existent. So these types of forms are temporarily shown to the demons only. And when they are withdrawn, the demons think the Lord has ceased to exist. And the audience thinks the magician has been cut to pieces or burnt to ashes. And Prabhupada concludes the purport. The conclusion is that the Lord has no material body, and therefore he's never to be killed or changed. by his transcendental body. And conclusion of this section, verse 36, when the personality of Godhead Lord Krishna left this earthly planet in his self-same form, from that very day Kali, who had already partially appeared, became fully manifest to create inauspicious conditions for those who are endowed with a poor fund of knowledge. So Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, the influence of Kali can be enforced only upon those who are not developed in God consciousness. One can neutralize the effects of Kali by keeping oneself fully under the supreme care of the personality of Godhead. So then Prabhupada makes an interesting point that Kali Yuga, when did it really begin? Well, it began, as the verse says, on the very day Krishna left this world, Kali Yuga began. And Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, the influence of Kali can be enforced only upon those who are not fully developed in God consciousness. One can neutralize the effects of Kali by keeping oneself fully under the supreme care of the personality of Godhead. So anyway, Kali Yuga began, as soon as Krishna left this world. Kali Yuga began immediately after the Battle of Kurukshetra. But its effects didn't manifest because Krishna was still there. As soon as he left, the symptoms, as seen by Maharaj Yudhisthira, if you remember all of that, those symptoms started, like real degradation and confusion and really unpleasant. Okay, so there you go, devotees. That's enough for tonight. We will continue on tomorrow night. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.